Okay, close your eyes for just a second. Imagine you're standing dead center in an ancient arena. The unremitting Mediterranean midsummer sun is just beating down on you, right? Now, there are no rounds here, no bells to save you, and there are definitely no cornermen waiting to wipe the blood out of your eyes. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking a truly gritty, unflinching look at blood and iron. We're going to examine 3 ancient Roman fighting styles that were so intensely brutal they would absolutely be illegal in literally any modern arena today. Let's get into it.
So picture this terrifying reality etched into the weathered marble of history. It's the year 648 BCE. You are facing a man who has been trained, literally since childhood, to break your fingers, crush your windpipe, and just wrench your joints completely out of their sockets. This was the world of the Greek agon, the sacred struggle. Now for the Greeks, these brutal contests were deeply religious rites, right? They were tests of what they called arete, or individual excellence. But as the centuries rolled on, the rising Roman Republic looked at this sacred aesthetic pursuit and, well, they completely warped it. They transformed it from a test of individual vanity into a clinical, lethal meat grinder engineered for 2 very specific things: military survival and political theater.
Let's really dive into this stark contrast, because it's fascinating. The Greeks, they fought wearing soft oxhide thongs to protect their knuckles. They treated combat as this naked, almost aesthetic test of individual vanity. But the Romans, they viewed that with serious suspicion. They were engineering combat for actual war. So they didn't want soft leather. They wanted terrifyingly effective combat engineering. And that mindset directly led to the creation of the iron-spiked caestus. This wasn't about athletic excellence anymore, guys. This was about absolute destruction.
Section 1. Pugilatus, the spark of iron.
Pugilatus was basically an absolute Roman boxing nightmare. It prioritized sheer kinetic energy over grace. Again, no timed rounds, no weight classes. And the tactics? Incredibly clinical. Fighters would adopt this super wide, deep-set stance just to maintain a low center of gravity. One hand, usually the left, was held open and outstretched, acting purely as a parrying tool. Meanwhile, that rear hand stayed cocked right at the jaw, just loaded up for a heavy, devastating overhand strike. And what's really fascinating here is that these fighters were exclusively headhunters. They actively avoided body shots. Why? Because hitting an opponent's ribs carried a massive risk of shattering their own hand.
So to solve that problem, the Romans essentially weaponized the human hand by creating the caestus. They systematically layered on the trauma. They started with heavy leather wraps, sure, but then they heavily reinforced them. We're talking embedded lead plates, bronze studs, and incredibly sharp iron spikes sewn directly over the knuckles. They even engineered internal knuckle duster grips inside the wraps, perfectly designed to maximize the transfer of kinetic energy. I mean, with this gauntlet equipped, a single, precise overhand strike could instantly shatter a jaw, or horrifyingly literally tear flesh completely from the bone.
Section 2. Luctatio, the legionary grind.
Next up is Luctatio, which was a vicious grappling system that Roman legionaries practiced every single day for pure survival. It was split into 2 distinct disciplines. First, you had Stuccateria. This was the upright battle, where fighters essentially fought to throw their opponent to the sand for 3 falls. But if that failed, the fight descended into Volubilis, and that was the savage, rolling ground fighting where the sole goal was absolute physical submission. Think about it. In the chaotic, incredibly tight crush of an ancient battlefield melee, a Roman soldier's sword arm would constantly get pinned against shields and bodies. So Luctatio provided the exact clinical close-quarters leverage that soldier needed to throw an enemy to the dirt, break a limb, maintain top position, and ultimately deliver a lethal dagger strike.
Because of that immense battlefield value, the Roman military officially integrated this combat system. Back in 105 BCE, a consul named Publius Rutilius Rufus made a move that honestly changed military history forever. He essentially militarized these martial arts. He summoned actual gladiator trainers, the doctoras, to drill his legionaries, and they used what's known as the tetrad training system. This was a brutal 4-day cycle of preparation, exhaustive endurance, recovery, and then technical skill development. By running soldiers through this exhaustive, unyielding loop, they forged an army that was literally just as deadly without a sword as they were with one.
Now, the reality of this ground war was absolutely horrific. Just listen to this account recounting the legend of Arretian of Figalia in the finals of 564 BCE. You see, the mechanics of Volubilis relied heavily on joint hyperextension and a devastating forearm choke known as the onchithine. In the specific, legendary match, Arretian was trapped in a rear stranglehold. As he was literally losing consciousness, suffocating to death, he somehow managed to wrench his opponent's ankle entirely from its socket. The agony was so intense that his opponent instantly signaled concession. Arretian was declared the winner, just moments after he had breathed his last breath. That is the absolute level of lethality we are talking about here.
Section 3.
Pankration, no rules, war.
Pankration translates directly to all power, and honestly, that is the perfect name for it. This was the ultimate, completely unhinged ancient MMA that helped forge these cold-blooded empire builders. It was a total fight system, meaning nothing was off the table. We are talking about deliberate genital kicks, vicious headbutts, and grips explicitly designed to crush the trachea. And of course, when the Romans adopted it from the Greeks for their own spectacles, they escalated the violence. They often added weighted leather to the fighters' hands during ground strikes, purely to ensure that the bloodthirsty audience got the traumatic concussions and sheer brutality they were paying for.
Believe it or not, in Pankration, there were only 2 rules. Just 2. No biting and no eye gouging. That's it. Outside of those 2 highly specific restrictions, absolutely every other form of anatomical destruction was completely legal. Deliberate joint breaks, windpipe-crushing chokes, shattering bones, all of it was not just allowed, it was actively encouraged by the roaring crowds.
So, as you can guess, this violence escalated massively across the centuries. Way back in 708 BCE, wrestling was added to the Olympics. Fast forward to 105 BCE. Rufus militarizes the tetrad for the Roman legionaries. Then the spectacle just peaks. Look at 65 BCE. Julius Caesar exhibited an astonishing 320 pairs of gladiators in silver armor. It was a display so massive and terrifying that the Roman Senate actually had to pass laws limiting private gladiator ownership. I mean, by 46 BCE, Caesar was commissioning temporary wooden stadiums specifically for heavy Greek combat events. But ultimately, the end came in 393 CE. The Christian emperor Theodosius I finally banned the spectacles outright, viewing them as these excessively violent relics of a pagan past.
If you want a real sense of this history, look closely at the famous bronze masterpiece known as the Boxer at Rest, which was discovered in the ruins of Rome. The horrific reality of this left-handed slugger's existence is permanently, painstakingly scarred right into the metal. The artist actually used copper inlays to represent fresh blood trickling from his nose and cheeks. You can see the swollen cauliflower ears. You can see the sunken lips where his teeth were long ago, driven in by the caestus. He just sits there, utterly exhausted, looking up, waiting for a next round that is never going to come. It's an incredibly haunting testament to the physical toll of these combat systems.
Which leaves us with this final thought. The ancient stadiums did eventually fall into ruin, you know? The training yards grew silent, and the iron-spiked caestus rusted away in the earth. But looking back at the brutal mechanics that forged the greatest empire the world has ever known, we really have to ask ourselves, is the science of the struggle truly dead? Or is the lethal DNA of Rome still hiding in plain sight, living on in every joint lock and every knockout blow we witness in our modern arenas today? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.